Namaste, I am Kanchan. Welcome to channel Vari, the Divine Journey. Today for festival we have a guest with us and let's just hear from our guest.
Hi, my name is Heather. I'm super happy to be here. I'm a writer, I'm a teacher, and I am a traveler, and I'm excited to share with you the story of some of my journeys.
Yes, since this is a travel channel, we will be finding many more people who will be telling their exciting journey, their stories, and they would inspire us to go for a new journey. So let's just start beginning with hearing Heather's story. Okay. So we are hearing stories from Heather about her journey. So can you tell us about some nice journey which you did, like whichever journeys you enjoyed and what all you enjoyed in that?
Sure. I believe I've been fortunate enough to go on several journeys in my lifetime. I didn't start traveling overseas or internationally until I was at the age of 28, so I'm a late bloomer, is what we call in the US. But I think it was my very first international trip that showed me this longing that I had, this passion for seeing the world.
And which was that place where you first went?
Well, the place was Tanzania. I decided when I graduated college, I would take myself on a holiday. I was there for a whole month by myself with my guide. Fred was the name of the guide who was with me on all of the safaris. I went on 4 different safaris.
Wow.
And I also climbed Kilimanjaro. And Uriel was my head guide with Kilimanjaro. And it shows you that, or that trip showed me, wherever you are in the world, it doesn't matter where you're from, if you have the passion to see something different, you open yourself up to many amazing journeys.
But for Kilimanjaro, it must be like you should be properly fit to go for this kind of trek.
Yes, so it was a very difficult trek. I learned a lot during the trek. But I took a year before I actually started hiking that to really train, to make sure I could walk for 3 or 4 hours easily.
Wow.
Because usually an average day on Kilimanjaro is between 5 and 8 hours. And I remember my family wanted to support me, though they thought I was crazy. They bought me a treadmill to walk in our garage. And I lived in Florida at the time, and it would be probably about 40 degrees Celsius in the garage.
Wow.
I would put weights in my backpack and just walk on that treadmill for 3 or 4 hours at a time.
Wow.
To get used to it. Our neighbors would drive by and they would say, "Oh, there's Heather again, the crazy one."
Okay, let me add something to our audience. The most important thing is there are some kind of tourism which we go and we like to enjoy the place, click photos and come back. But this kind of a trek is not a usual thing. Here you have to be like physically prepared, and what she mentioned is like she did proper cardio training and weight training where she is having that weight in that temperature and walking for so much of long time. But the thing is, it's not only physical, it is also a mental. So while you are young, don't waste your time, just try to find all the information about this treks and just prepare yourself and step out of your house. Of course the situation is going to, sooner or later it is going to improve. For that, I want Heather you to tell that have you created some blog for this?
I have. So when I came back from Kilimanjaro, many people were asking about my journey before, because it was a huge part of it, the before and after. And so you can find my blog. It's called Mountains Worth the Valleys. It's on WordPress. And that was the very first entry, all about my journey through Africa.
Okay, that's a beautiful name. So I'll be putting those blog links in the description section. Make sure you go and read all those details that are going to sure help you. Yes, you are telling about the preparation and all the neighbors are seeing what is going on.
The crazy one. They all knew. All my neighbors, we've grown up together for years, and so we're a family. And though it was not something a typical young American would want to go do, they were all very supportive, very fortunate. So my parents drove me to the airport, and I was excited. I was nervous because it was the longest I'd be away from my family. My dad's got tears in his eyes. My mom is sniffling. So I get on the plane, I'm sniffling, and it was the longest flight I'd ever taken at that point. I've taken much longer ones now. And I arrived in Arusha, Tanzania at about 9 o'clock at night. And it's a small airport. You get off and you walk out of the plane on the stairs. And I had read somewhere that you had to get a visa on arrival. It would cost $25 US at that time. But that sometimes the agent would give you a hard time if they just didn't like you. So
these things happen.
Yes.
We don't have control on those aspects.
No, you don't. But I knew going in that if I at least took the opportunity to learn how to say hello and thank you in Swahili, then maybe I would get a little bit farther. So I was in line, and the person in front of me, the agent said no. You had to have the exact cash. I don't know how you could get the cash at that point. There's no ATMs between the plane and the customs, yes. So I came up, I had my exact change, I put my money down, slid it to the agent, and I said, Jumbo! And I smiled. Obviously I said it with the wrong accent, but she was okay with it. She laughed, stamped my passport, gave it back without any problems, and then I said,
You're set for the holiday.
I was like, whew, first step, done. I got out, I got my luggage. I had 4 suitcases, which is a lot, but two were personally mine, and I had actually hooked up with a orphanage there, a children's home, with the school I was working at the time. I gotten a grant approved for books to be donated, and all of the students at the school I was at made bookmarks for the students at
so
this
you
home.
were carrying all the stuff?
So I was carrying it too.
Oh, that is so nice of you.
Yes, so, I wanted the journey to be about something more than just myself. And so
That's a way beyond thought you're putting in you are just going for an adventure trip, but you have something behind your mind and you're already prepared something like that. So very nice.
Thank you. And so I got there, and I knew going in that they would tax you if they found out there was a certain amount of American books.
So those are used books, right?
No, they were all brand new.
Oh, you brought new
Every
books?
classroom donated a book to take. So I knew I was going in, kind of risky. And I got to where they checked the luggage, and I took my locks off all 4 luggage, suitcases, and I looked at the customs agent, and I go, Jumbo?
Okay, let me ask, what is jumbo?
Jumbo means hello in Swahili.
Oh.
So I was trying to use Swahili. I only knew 2 words at the time. And they waved me on through. They didn't check my luggage. So, second time that night, using Jumbo got me through without any problems. And then I found my driver who was waiting for me with my sign, and he took me to the hotel. The next day, I started my first journey. My first safari was Fred, who met me there. He was an old man. He was a Maasai originally, but he was this tour guide, and Fred was very protective of me. If anyone approached the vehicles, he would tell them to leave me alone. He would make sure I was protected. And we got to a village on the west side of Kilimanjaro, which was actually the main reason I had gone to Tanzania, was to climb Kilimanjaro. And you could see Kilimanjaro in the distance. And this was a tented lodge, so there's really no electricity there. And it's tents, and you have to lock your tent when you leave it, because monkeys will come in and take all of your luggage. Like, they'll unpack your luggage for you, but they'll put everything in the trees.
Yeah, we know this kind
And so I made sure to lock that tent every night I left, for dinner. And again, I was by myself, so I ate dinner by myself. But it didn't feel like you were lonely because the staff would come and say hello to you. They would ask questions. They were very curious about my story as well. And while I was on the west side of Kilimanjaro, we had a ranger with us because the animals are a little bit more wild. They're not used to people in that area. And I remember we took a hike one day.
So when you were there, it was a group or it was just you?
So I was by myself.
But there were other tourists?
Not in our group. So I was really the only person in my group of one. And then Fred was my guide.
Okay.
Now, and then it was a very quiet lodge. There wasn't a lot of people there. Just the staff, myself, and my ranger, and Fred. And so we took a hike one day, Fred and the ranger and I. And it was really interesting because there was elephants, wild elephants that would walk through. And
That's so exciting.
I know, I love elephants. And so it was one of those moments where we didn't get super close to the elephants, but we got to see a herd of them walk by us.
Wow.
And they could you knew they had such power, and yet they were so graceful as they walked or glided by. But it was then I learned of poaching. There was a lot of poachers in that area.
That's an unfortunate part.
It is, and we did see the remains of one elephant that had obviously suffered from poaching. But we moved on, and actually the next day was probably my favorite day at the lodge. They took me to a Maasai Village, and all of the men were gone. They had taken the herds of cows out farther because there was a drought and they needed to find the grass for the cows. So they were all gone, but they had all the women and all the children were in the village. And here I come. I obviously look very different too. And it was exciting. Like, all the kids were excited. They wanted to come feel my skin. And the women were very curious. And one of the ladies invited Fred and I inside her hut. So I could see what the inside of a hut is. And I will share some photos as well.
Okay, we'll be sharing those photos. Those photos will be available on website.
Yes. And she was a lovely woman. So I was 29 at the time, and she was my age.
Oh.
She already had 3 or 4 children.
Wow.
And we walk into this hut. It's very dark and very low to the ground because it's made out of dung and mud. And she sits on the bed that she shares with her kids and her husband, and it's not much wider than a twin-size bed. And all their pots are on one side of the hut, and her kids, 2 or 3 of the kids are sitting next to her, and we were talking. And she asked
which
me,
language were you talking?
Fred was our translator, so she was talking in her native language, and Fred translated for us.
Okay.
Because she let Fred come in as well. So she was asking a lot of questions about what I did, and I told her I was a teacher at the time, and she was amazed that I had a job. Then she asked me about my husband, and I'm single, and she couldn't believe I was still single at the age of 29 at the time. She asked me about my kids, and I said I don't have kids. She couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe that my parents were still allowing me to live at home as a single woman, age 29. And then I don't know how we started talking about it, but I had 2 dogs at the time that I did consider my children, Dumbo and Rita.
Yes, they are.
And she could not believe I had dogs in the house. She could not believe my dog slept in my bed with me.
So both of you were having culture shock.
Yes.
You as seeing, okay, that's a family house and that's how they live. And for her, hearing everything about you.
Yes, about my Western culture. And it was just an interesting moment because obviously we were both women, both the same age, but our lives were totally different.
But in India, also, if at 29 you are with parents and they will be like, all the stories around. So that's a common thing.
Good. Then I'm glad you can relate. And then the next day I was off. I went back to the town of Arusha to meet my Kilimanjaro family. And I learned that I would have 12 guides with me. We call them porters. And so here I was. 12 porters to carry my luggage, all the camping gear, because we camp.
Oh, yes.
All the food.
But this journey was for how many days?
So my entire journey in Tanzania was 30 days.
But the hike, the
The
main hike.
hike was going to be, it was scheduled for 11 or 12 days, and I was able to do it in 9 or 10 days.
Wow. So it's like you go with the team at particular intervals. You stop there, you do camping overnight, and then you continue your journey till you reach the peak
Yes.
what they have designated, and then you come back walking again.
Yeah, so exactly that. So it takes about 7 to 8 days to safely make it to the summit, the top of the mountain. And you want to go slow like that because you want to get
Enjoy.
used to the altitude. It's actually the altitude. If you go too fast, you'll get pretty sick or not make it.
So the thing which you did in your parking lot was helping you.
Yes, so I was able to endure quite a lot of time on walking. I
That's
didn't have a
good.
problem walking. The altitude affected me to some degree, like you would get a headache and the
Mhm.
breathing became more difficult. But again, I had a really great group of men with me at the time who were there to help me. Their goal was to make sure I made it to the top safely. And then hiking down is easy because you
That
can
will
go
be shorter
faster.
duration. Yeah.
Yeah, you can go faster and you get more oxygen, or you feel like you're getting more oxygen, and by that time you're ready for a shower, you're ready to get off that mountain.
But
So-
while you are hiking and also, what all you do for like shower and all?
Well, you don't really shower. You
Save water.
what I called a bird bath. So they would give you a bucket if you wanted it, but there's no electricity. They have to carry all the water, so you just made sure you washed your hands really good. I brought wipes, and then I had air freshener I sprayed on my clothes, so I didn't smell too bad. But when you're hiking a mountain, you're not thinking how pretty you look or if you smell or not. You really are
That's
there
true,
for
that's
another.
true. But only the concern is about sanitization, like
Yeah.
where, like since you were all alone with those guys, and
Yeah.
you are still a tourist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I never felt unsafe at any point. I knew they were there to help me. It was a really well-trusted company I used at the time. Many people had gone before me and used them, and I read their reviews and spoke
Have
to
you
a few.
mentioned about your tour, like where you are booked, about them?
Sure, yeah. So the name of the company was Tusker Trails. They actually go to quite a few places around the world. They go to Kilimanjaro. They've done it for 30, 40 years.
Okay.
They go to Everest Base Camp. They go to Mongolia. And I believe they're starting a trek in Greenland soon,
Wow.
actually. But they're
So,
a great company.
It's on your list.
I would like to go with them again. It's a group of people that I trust. I consider Amy and Eddie Frank, the owners of the company, family.
Okay, make sure you go and check this blog on her website, and you will find all the details of the tour company which Heather has used.
Yes, so again, I highly recommend Tusker Trail. They are truly life-changing. They've changed my life several times over, and I still talk to both Amy and Eddie today. But yeah, so Uriel, like Oreo is what he said, was my guide. He was the head guide, and I was by myself again in this group because none of my friends wanted to come and join me on this trek. And so I went, and day one, you start off in a rainforest. And there's monkeys and just a lot of trees, and you're shaded by the canopy. And
Personally, I am a bit scared person. Like, I can see crocodile, snake, but monkeys I am a bit scared because in my childhood when we used to go to some one-day trip in the jungles, they used to come and they used to attack so many people, and I used to be like so much scared. So monkeys is like a bit scary. I like them; they are very nice, they are very cute
Just
and
stay away.
everything. But yeah, up from away.
Yeah, well, it's actually good luck if you see, they're black and white monkeys, and if you get to see them when you're in the rainforest there, it's considered good luck.
Yeah.
So
So-
that's what they told me at least. But they're very shy monkeys. They usually don't come out. If they hear you coming, they stay
Maybe
away.
if you spend some time in that place, slowly they will come out, and
They might.
if they find food with you, and then slowly might be they must be interacting.
They might. It's just apparently a very shy breed of monkey in this particular region. So we started our hike, and it was muddy because it had just rained in the rainforest. And I thought, I don't know if this is something I want to do for the next 10 days. But I thought that's okay. If other people had done it, I could do. And so after the first day, I did struggle carrying my own day pack because the altitude was a little bit more, just affected me a little bit more than I thought it would. And so they were really kind. They had 2 other guys hike with us from the team. And one carried my pack for me, and the other was there with medical equipment. And that's something they carry on every trek, great medical equipment in case they ever needed it, which they did not, luckily. And Uriel is ahead of us. And there was many other tour groups on the mountain. And there was actually a group.
Okay, so you are not all alone. There are people
in
different groups.
Yeah, there's other groups there with other tour companies.
Just one thing I would like to add is like when, as a geologist, we used to go in field. First instruction was given to us, specifically girls, was you are going to carry your own stuff. Even when you carry your samples, rock samples, you are supposed to pick your own luggage. Nobody should be helping you. No boys are going to pick your bag. So you have to pack your bag accordingly. So now still the story remains same that you cannot have a limited backpack. So might be in this trip did you leave some stuff in the tent and just carry some important stuff with you?
Yes, so I do know I mentioned the 4 pieces of luggage. 2 had already been taken to the children's home. So I really only took what was necessary for the hike. Everything else was left at the hotel. And so I had a day pack which would have my snacks, my water for the day, different layers of
But they
clothing.
do arrange some food for you on this trek?
Yes, so the beauty of Tusker Trails is Eddie and Amy are foodies. They like cuisine and different cuisine, and they have all their chefs on the hikes, they're trained. So we had a great chef, Magnus was his name, so he cooked all 3 meals every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then I brought my own snacks on the trip that I would like. Because you burn so many calories a day, your goal is to eat as many calories.
But since you are going for so many days, you will definitely need good quality, good amount of water to be carried with you.
Yes, so the men carry all the water because they also need it.
And that's heavy, yeah?
Yes, it was very heavy. I don't. When you watch those porters carry the bags on their head up this mountain, you have a whole new respect for the parts that put a trip together like that. It's pretty amazing to watch them, and that's probably why I had 12 men with me because there was so much stuff. And they climbed that mountain like it's an everyday walk for us on a sidewalk.
So you actually inspired, like you actually prepared with the gear that you're going to carry weight, you're preparing yourself physically, and then you actually did it. So now everybody is like looking to your stories and they are getting inspired that okay, Heather can do it, let's just follow her. And
if I can do it, I truly believe anyone with the right attitude could definitely do it.
But I want to know that other than Kilimanjaro, was there any other travel experience that you would like to share with our audience in India?
I have gone to some beautiful places in the world. Mongolia was probably the prettiest place I've been. I don't have favorite places, just different categories. And so Mongolia, we went to, actually a really funny story I'll share with you.
Please, we'd like to hear this story.
So I went with Tusker Trail again to Mongolia. They go there every summer. They run 2 treks there every summer. And it's about a 2 or 3 week. You can either hike or you can take a horse, traditional Mongolian horses, which are wild 10 months out of the year, and they are only used for riding 2 months. And they're used for these treks. So you can either hike it or take the horse. And I signed up for the horse. And we fly into Ulaanbaatar. There was other people on this trek with us this time, so I was not by myself, and I met new friends.
But it must be exciting Mongolian places and on horse.
Yes, and so we fly into Ulaanbaatar, and the next day we took a 3-hour flight out west to the Altai Mountains, to this little town called Ogi, which is kind of near the border.
Okay.
And it's a small town, like the airport, you get off, and it's 1 room. The bathrooms are outside, porta potties with holes in the ground for the bathroom. And I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be great. And we go and we stayed in a ger, or a yurt, which is a traditional Mongolian home
Mm-hmm.
that the nomad used. And it was a really small town. And we had...
If I'm not mistaken, is this huts with the animal skin they cover?
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's amazing how they make it. They are kind of a tribal people, which I saw one video in which they just every 15 days they carry that house with entire stuff inside house, and entire family migrates
Yes.
to different places.
they are a true nomadic
Wow.
lifestyle.
Wow.
And so, and depending on the season is where they go. And so we went to Ugali and we met our guide, and our guide was Doshan. And it was another 8-hour drive to where we started the actual horseback riding trip. So you're 8 hours.
This was for how many days?
So I was on the horse for about 2 weeks.
Wow.
So what happens is, this is a little bit of a different trek. So you still take your own snacks. They have a chef that they fly out from Tanzania that they've trained, and he comes to Mongolia for 6 weeks every summer to be the private chef for us. And we stay in tents throughout the trek, and we have to set up our own tent.
Wow.
And it got really cold. They had a really cold winter, and this is in June, and you would think it would be a little bit warmer, but it was not. And
Wow.
the snow had not melted fully. And so we had camels that carried all our camels carried our packs, like our luggage and all the camping equipment. So we rode the horse, and the camels would meet us in the place. Well, because of so much snow had not melted yet from the mountains,
Mhm.
we couldn't actually go through the pass because the camel feet,
The actual trail.
the actual trail was still covered in snow.
Mhm.
So we actually had to turn back and
Because
go.
of camels, they should be able to traverse the terrain.
Yes, but because of the snow, they can't travel in the snow like that.
Mm.
So we actually ended up going back to where we started, which was completely fine. But on the trek, Carbide was one of the horse wranglers, and he invited us into his home, and we got to sing. He sang for us and played the guitar, and his family offered us cheese made from yak,
Wow.
cheese and yak tea, and it was just, though we didn't speak the same language, the travelers or the trekkers and the locals, the nomads, it didn't really matter again, because you got to enjoy their life. You got to go into a home of a traditional nomadic family and see the gear from above,
Yeah.
and where the stove is in the middle of the home, and everyone sleeps in this one.
Because it has to
circular room.
become warm, they don't have any heater kind
Yeah.
of a thing.
And now, again, it was pretty cold every night. I was very surprised. They had to give me an extra hot water bottle to put at my feet every night because I was so cold. And then my favorite story from that trek was, it was our last day of riding, and it was storming. It was the only day that rained, and the rain would not stop. And you're on this horse, and my horse was very old, so you knew that this was the last summer this horse would be alive because they would make sausage out of it later on.
Poor fellow.
Yes, because horses are not pets there. You learn that as you travel. Not everywhere sees a horse as a pet, or any animal.
Domestic cat.
Yes, domesticated. So my horse was kind of going along, and we get back to a river that we had already crossed in the beginning of the trek, and it was really fine. It was maybe up to the horse's belly when we first crossed it.
Wow.
Well, when we were coming back, because it was raining and the glacier was melting and the snow was melting,
It must
It
be cold
kinda-
water.
oh, it was freezing. But that wasn't the worst part. We got to it, and it was kind of a rushing river at that point because of all the water coming
But
from
that
the
was the
glacier.
only path you could make.
It was the only thing we could do. Like, you had to cross it or you were stuck there.
Imagine if you were not selecting the horse option.
Well, they did, for the hikers, they always had to, whoever was hiking, they had horses with us for the crossing of the
Okay.
water.
Okay.
So, but I rode the horse the whole time. And I remember turning to a girl that I had become friends with on this trip, and thinking, are they really going to make us cross this raging river? And there was a local family there's 3 of them on a horse all together crossing this river, and the water was up to their waist, and the horse's head was just sticking out of the water, and I'm like, I did not sign up for this. This is beyond what I wanted to do.
you got a better package. This kind of adventure you would have never experienced.
Yeah, this is not included in the description. And so Eddie, who is the owner of the company, he was on this trek. I remember him turning and looking at all of the. There was only 8 of us on the trek, and he turned to look at us and told us to take our feet out of the stirrups and to put our feet as high as we could in case the horse got washed away by the water, and that way we could roll off the horse and hold on to a rope and not get lost.
That was a great adventure.
I remember looking at my friend thinking, are they serious? And so someone went first and they lived. I'm like, okay, they made
But then
it.
they must be making a chain so that everybody is going together, or one at
And
a
they
time.
had to do one at a time because it was so dangerous. And they had carried a rope across so the riders could all hold a rope. And then our feet are up high up on the horse's back, and the horse is trying to swim across this rushing river. And I remember talking to this horse saying, if you get
That must be how many minutes crossing?
It's about 3 or 4 minutes trying to get across the river.
But still.
But it's a really long 4 minutes. And I just remember talking to the horse the whole time, like, look, buddy, I promise to buy you your own field, your own barn, no sausage, just get me across. I don't care. Please do not lose me. And we got off and we're all soaked because obviously the water was up to our waist on the back of the horse. And it was just like, thank goodness it was the last day. And and then we actually went back to Carbide's gear and they let us kind of dry off and fed us.
And the horses as well?
And the
They
horses
must be
were
feeling
allowed.
cold, yeah?
The horses, but see, that's the thing about the horses there. They're so used to being in the wild 10 months out of the year that they don't really care. The horses didn't care.
Okay, see, horse is not going to remember those 3-4 minutes.
Yeah.
But for us, it's like a time travel
A
where you
lifetime.
realize that 3-4 minutes can be expanded and it becomes so big.
Yes. So that was that trip, and then we ended up flying back to Olgi, and we're driving back to Olgi to fly back to Ulaanbaatar at the end of the trip.
Mhm.
And yeah, I still talk to 1 or 2 people from that trek that I was on.
That is so exciting, yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, you are a mountain person.
I'm a bit of everything kind of person. I like the mountains. I'm scared of heights, but I'm okay with hiking the mountains. I like looking at them, but I also like the water. So maybe I'm just a world person. That's what
Given
I'll
a
say.
choice, seaside or mountain.
It would depend on what was being offered.
In
I
what
can't just
sense?
pick. I just can't pick. If it was a hut on the side of a beach somewhere, but with fantastic cuisine and a little bit of culture, I would say that. Or if I was in the mood for
Okay, so you
some
say
lunch.
that your answer is give me both the holidays one at a time.
Yes, give me everything.
True. Even I will choose that.
Yes.
So this was your Kilimanjaro, and then was your Mongolian
Mongolia.
trip, and then any other trip?
Yeah, I've been a little bit all over Asia. I've been to Nepal, been to Myanmar,
Wow.
Thailand, Vietnam. Stories in every place. Every place has a different heartbeat and something beautiful to offer.
But like when you are doing any kind of expedition or kind of a hiking, everybody says that your physical fitness is important, but I do believe that it's also to do with your mental fitness. Sometimes, like, it really gets put to test. Like when in my childhood I was living just at the foothills, like every monsoon we used to have waterfall gushing through our buildings, and we had cobra snakes and everything. For going daily school we used to walk in this much water up to the main street and then wear our shoes and then go. So for me it is like I'm a mountain person. Given a choice, I would like, of course, like both the holidays, but I always like a mountain because you have a life, you have a view, you have lots of drama to it. And if you see, as the season change, as the weather changes, within 2 minutes it can, from now it is different to a different new world. So I always like to be on mountains. And about food, are you selective about food?
I like to try different food. from the different cuisines that are offered. I've had some really tasty food where I've been. I can remember going to Nepal, and we were hiking and we had yak burgers for the first time.
How was it?
It was delicious. I couldn't believe it was that amazing. When I've been in China, I've had someone cook sweet and sour chicken from scratch, and it's the best food I've ever had. Street food, when I went to Macau, there's a 1 Michelin star hole in the wall. It literally is a hole in the wall, and it's got 1 Michelin star.
Wow.
And it's it costs maybe 3 yuan for this pork pie patty, and it was delicious. I've had homemade dim sum. When I was in Myanmar, we went to Inle Lake, and it's a very popular tourist destination in Myanmar. And so in Inle Lake, there's huts on the water. It's a lake village, and they do a lot of silk making, and they dye silk. And my friend and I went to one of the places that all tourists go to. But our guide let us go back behind the scenes, kind of in the different areas and the different manufacturing that they don't always let tourists go to. And the women had stopped to take a break, and they were eating the salad of, I don't even know what was in it. I wish I could tell you. It was lettuce, and almost something was pickled and sour and acidic, and it was just very flavorful with the homemade rice crackers. And they asked us to sit and join them. And even that meal was pretty amazing because you got something that.
So initially, in your mind, it must be like, oh, I'm eating something bizarre. But when the moment you sit and eat, you're like, okay, this is something very nice taste. You are enjoying it.
Yeah, I think I like to go into it with a different idea because to me, food is love, right? Food, when you take the time to make something that you enjoy and you share it with someone else, it's something special. And I think you can learn a lot about a group of people, a person, a culture, a country.
Yeah, that becomes a source point where you connect with different cultures, and when you speak over the food, everything comes out.
Yeah, it just makes, it's a comfort level.
Yes.
You know, food is comfort. And yeah, I've been able to enjoy many different cuisines all over.
See, that's the magic of traveling. When you go for travel, you obviously enjoy, but when you come back and you share your stories with friends, that is more fun. That it remains as a part of your memory.
Yeah, and even when I was on that Kilimanjaro trek, I had my own dining tent because that was just something they did for all of the travelers in this company. You had your own tent and they would bring the food to you. And I remember after that first night eating by myself saying, oh, this is not going to work for me. And I asked,
why?
I was by myself. And
means
it was
all
very
alone,
lonely.
nobody is there with you.
Yeah, in the dining tent, because that's what the travelers sign up, you know, when they sign up for this trek, they get their own dining tent.
Because they don't want to do it in outdoors. It is kind of a jungle environment. The moment you put candles and all insects are going to join you for dining.
Well, that and there wasn't a vibe in it. There wasn't any kind of pulse in this tent. You're by yourself.
Yeah, I
There's
understand.
No one to talk
Since
to.
you want people to be around while you are
Yeah.
eating your food and enjoying it.
So I asked the next day, Uriel, I'm like, is there any way that you guys can join me or I can at least sit in the tent where you guys prepare the food? And they would let me come and sit there while they're all doing their thing. They're talking in Swahili. I only knew my 2 words at the time.
Jumbo.
3 words.
What's that?
I knew Jumbo, Kaka, which is brother, and I did 4. Dada is sister, and Asante Sana is thank you very much.
Asante Sana.
Asante Sana is thank you very much.
Okay.
And so I asked, I said, can I please let me sit in there. I won't be a bother. I won't get in the way. I will sit in the corner. And they let me do that. And the moment I was able to join them, it helped to get through. I didn't feel so lonely on this journey.
True. And now I get where your emotion is coming. You
Yes.
cannot sit alone and lonely. You want people around, something happening around, which is not
Right.
bothering you, you are not bothering them.
And then you got to see what they ate, right? Like I remember one night one of them had a really bad cough, and so they fixed him some ginger broth, and they let me try it. And it was the first time I had had ginger broth, funny enough. And they also, I think it's called Ugali, which I'll have to look up the term and get back to you, but I think it's called Ugali, and it's a traditional East African dish where it's kind of like beef tartare, but not quite beef tartare, where it's raw beef, and it's mixed together with flour, and they like to eat that as a snack, and they made it for themselves, and I asked if I could try it.
Yeah, so you are basically a person who want to try what people are trying, not the ones
I do
which
want to try it, because if I don't try it, how am I going to know whether or not I like it? How am I going to know that's something I would thoroughly enjoy? And so I've learned many things about what I do enjoy.
That's so nice.
Yeah, I know that I really like Chinese chili paste. I like
Wow.
Thai chilies. Oh yeah. I would have never known I liked dal. I wouldn't have known I liked yak burgers or any other cuisine that I've enjoyed. So, yeah.
I made a dal and she had very little, so I know if she liked or not.
I do like dal. For the record, I do. I've had it several times.
And this time it was only this much.
I ate before I came.
Okay. On that note, we'll meet in another section. Keep watching. It is so interesting to hear what all Heather has done. So we'll be watching, and make sure you like and subscribe to our channel and read all the blogs from Heather. Hello friends, welcome back, and after the break we are going to hear more stories, more something exciting from Heather, from her journeys. So that's the best part I like. One is go on travel, tour, eat food, enjoy the place, enjoy the beauty, and then come back and tell all the stories. It's on to you.
Okay. So I thought I would also share a little bit about some of the challenges that you can find on trips.
Sure.
So one trek that I've been to, I have gone to Everest Base Camp, which surprises people because I don't look like a typical hiker or someone that would want to go to Everest.
Yeah,
Base
I'm
Camp.
just planning myself that I have to get that physical fitness and to go for Everest Base Camp, because there will be always a age group where only in that age group, if I'm not an athlete person, I should plan to do it in that particular before the time goes away. So, but since you have already did 2 mountain treks that are such a big thing in itself, I think you are prepared for Everest Base Camp.
Yes, well, I thought I was. Everest is a beautiful mountain. I went through the Nepal side, and when you see Everest in person, it's almost a spiritual moment, because you hear about this mountain, you hear about people wanting to go and climb it. Again, it's not something that I grew up thinking I would ever want to go do. It was not like the mountain was talked a lot about in my family. So when I decided to do this, it was very unexpected. And I went with Eddie and Amy. Amy, the owners of the Tusker Trail. And so Amy was one of the guides. And again, it was a group of people I had never met before. We had all signed up for this, and so we met when we landed in Kathmandu. And the thing about this trek is when you're hiking Everest Base Camp, you stay in lodges along the way, so you don't have to worry about camping. You do have to worry about temperature, you do have to worry about injuries, and you do have to worry about altitude, and you have to worry about the yaks.
Because they are going to hurt you?
So I feel like there's a hierarchy in the trek when you're on the pass. So there's a lot of trekkers already, so a lot of people. The paths sometimes are very narrow, sometimes they're a little bit wider. And so you have the yaks that carry all of the goods, because there is no transportation there. The yaks are transportation, or you walk.
Okay.
And the yaks don't care if you're in their way. So when you hear the yak bell coming, you kind of get as close as you can to the mountainside, flatten yourself against it, and then the yaks kind of walk by. Yes, and then you have your trekkers and your guides as well. They're allowed to
I can
go on.
actually imagine it's a narrow path. Two yaks are going in two different directions, and like if the path is very small, everybody has to give way
Yes.
to them.
Yes, and it can be a little tricky at times if it's during trekking season.
Wants to sniff you or taste you.
Oh, they don't care about you. They just don't care if you're in their way. They will knock you over. And if you try to touch them, their horns are not
Straight.
They're not straight. They're pointy. They're dirty.
They
so you
have
don't wanna-
designed it as well.
Yes, so you never know if they would look at you or try to hit you with the horn. So you always have to be careful.
Wow.
And as we're hiking Everest Base Camp, that was another that was 21 days I was gone in all, from the moment I left my home to the moment I got back. And I arrived, and the one thing about Everest Base Camp was that it was very cold. So you add layers as you hike, but of course you get warm during the day and you want to take the layers off, but then if you're cold, you want to put them back on. So it's a constant changing of your
But
clothes.
here also you have to carry everything with you.
So you had a day pack that you carried, your snacks and your layers. Once again, the company is lovely, and they knew I needed a little extra help with my extra day pack, so they did provide someone for me to stay with me at all times. And then everything else, your clothes, your sleepwear, your sleeping bag is taken up on top of the yaks. So the yaks carry it. We also had Sherpas that would carry the food. We had the yak Sherpas that made sure the yaks, it was a family, a man and wife and their daughter who were in charge of the yaks. We had a chef that came with us, and we had our head guide and the Sherpas that would just help us out along the way. And there's so many stories from Everest Base Camp that just fill my heart with warmth. One of the days we were hiking, we got to stop in Tinboche, which is one of the monasteries where the Dalai Lama goes to sometimes.
Okay.
And we got to meet I don't remember if he was the second or third in line.
Disciples.
Yes, so we got to go in and have an audience with him, and they tell you, you go in, you cover your head, and you are very quiet, you don't speak to him, and you're just very respectful. And we went in as a group, and we tied a red necklace around us, string, and gave us a blessing. And you just sat there, and you could feel the calmness that he was just radiating. He was an old man, very frail, and we were just sitting there, and he entertained us we were there for about an hour, and we got to hear the monks and their prayers and their chants.
Wow, that must be beautiful.
It really is a beautiful moment. We also were able to stop off at a monastery that was only female monks.
Yeah.
And it just, again, it's so interesting to see anything in this world that's different than what I'm used to, but to see another woman living a whole different life
In a different setting.
in a different location, in a different way, but to understand and get to know them, because there's beauty in everyone's story. There's no right or wrong to it, and it's just a magical moment. Another person we met along the way was someone who was also a practicing Lama. He had a master's in Buddhism, and I've never met anyone so joyous in my entire life. He was just joyful. That's the best way I can describe this man. And he also had us for an audience to kind of teach us about Buddhism. And we walked in, and I remember he also tied a red string around our necks for a blessing, and he would pull down on the red string after we tied it to kind of just tap your head. But he pulled mine too hard, so we bumped heads. And I just remember thinking to myself, oh no, I'm gonna get kicked out. I hope he doesn't think this is disrespectful.
There must be lots of transfer.
And
he wished
he
to
just,
do.
yeah, he was just laughing. He
Data
just thought it was
transfer.
hilarious. And it was just, and I sat there, and obviously I didn't know what he was saying. We had translators for us, and he would show us these scripts that were written thousands of years ago in Buddhist script, and to see something that old and that revered and worshipped, it was just.
They allow you to take pictures?
Yes. So on my blog, I should have some pictures of what they showed us and of this
I would
man.
love to see them.
Yes, I will definitely share them with you. And again, it was just, you meet different people along your journey, and he is just someone who I know. When I'm feeling down, or when I'm feeling like there's something standing in my way, or if I'm having just a troublesome day, I think back to that moment where I met this.
Remember the face.
His face and his laughter, really, because I don't think that's something that I would ever be able to hear again.
But that's remained in your memory.
It does. And then, of course, there's injuries that you can also get. And I was actually injured on my hike in Everest Base Camp. And so I'll tell you a little background story. Before I flew to Everest Base Camp, or before I flew to start my journey to Everest Base Camp, my family had gone on a holiday to Alaska. And my parents were there, and they were talking about everyone in Alaska has to have medical insurance that includes being airlifted out.
What's that?
Airlifted through a
So
helicopter.
the word mellow, what you said?
Insurance. They had to have special insurance to medevac or take them out by helicopter
Emergency.
if they ever get sick, and that sometimes it would cost $60,000 or $100,000
Yeah, I know that is
US.
pretty expensive.
Well, I've had special insurance. When I hike, I have a company I go through in case I do need to be evacuated. So my mom remembers this from the trip when we went to Alaska. So 6 months later, I'm in Nepal. You can't take a car, there's no ambulances, there's nothing. And I injured my knee. Now I admit I injured it the day before I got to Everest Base Camp, and you probably should tell your guides if you do injure yourself. But I was so close to that goal of making it to base camp that I didn't tell them. I kept walking on it. So of course it got worse. Made it to base camp, beautiful. You're there for 5 minutes because it's so cold and crowded. We get back to the lodge after we made it to base camp, and my knee was just throbbing. And I thought, I'll sleep on it tonight, and then I'll tell them in the morning. So the next day, I told Eric, the medical guide, and Amy, my knee kind of hurt. I
4
think
days back.
Yeah, I heard it a couple of days ago, but now it's really hurting, So we would ice it, and they would just walk really slow with me to the next village where we were stopping for the next night. It hurt, and so we decided that I would take a horse because I did not want to call my parents and tell my mom that I couldn't
Last
walk.
thing you should ever do.
Right, I did not want to tell my mom. My dad had injured himself, so my mom was taking care of him, and I thought, I'm not adding anything else to my mother's plate. I am not calling this woman. So I arranged for a horse to take me from one village to the next village, and the hikers would just meet me there, and that's how I was going to do it. So I'm on this horse, and this horse had just had a baby. I didn't know the horse had just had the baby, and they had separated it so it could take me to the next village.
Oh, poor fellow.
And it wasn't a nice horse. It would try to buck and kick anyone that got near it. And so they put me on the back of this horse. It's not comfortable for my knee. It made my knee feel worse.
Both were in an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, and so I had a Sherpa with me, walking with me and this guide, because the guide didn't speak English. And anytime we passed the other hikers on the trail, the horse tried to kick them. There's a lot of suspension bridges as well in this area of the world. I thought they would have me get off the horse to walk across it. I had to ride the horse over the suspension bridge. Oh. And so it's kind of swinging. The rope is up here, right? So the height of my hips while I'm sitting on the horse. So I'm thinking if this horse decides to get angry, I'm just going to go flying off.
I can actually
There's
visualize everything.
I was so stressed out from this horse ride. I met the group for lunch that afternoon from this horse. After lunch, it was my time to get back on the horse. The horse is this far away from the ledge, and I'm like, I can't swing my injured knee like that. So one of the trekkers, Elaine, he pushes the horse, like body slams the horse to get as close as me. I get on real quick. The horse tries to kick him, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna die on this horse. I can only imagine what my mom would say. So that night we get back to Namche.
Does she know this story?
My mom knows afterwards.
Afterwards.
Because
Okay.
at that point I knew I could not take
Because
the
if
horse.
she sees this video and then she is not aware of the story.
My mom's aware of all my shenanigans and crazy stories at now. But so at this point I get to Namche Bazaar, which is a very in terms of Everest Base Camp, it's a pretty popular place. People stay there for 2 or 3 days to acclimatize to the height, the altitude, and to rest. I get there and I knew I could not take that horse another day. I could not do it. I could not hike it. And I thought, I'm going to have to call my mother. So my dad again was home because he had an injury the day before I left actually for the trip. I almost canceled the whole thing because of it. But my aunt and uncle had agreed to stay with them to help my mom while I left. So I called, my dad answered the phone. And I said, Dad, I need to have a helicopter take me to at least Lukla, which is the beginning of the hike. I knew I didn't want to fly all the way back to Kathmandu. I knew if I could get to Lukla, I could wait a few days and fly out on the plane with the rest of the group. And that would save money. I thought I was being cost efficient to tell my mom. And my dad and I, we were very close when he was alive, and so he was like, oh, anything, Heather, but you have to tell your mother. I'm not telling her. So I talked to Mingma, and they arranged for a helicopter to take me from Namche Bazaar to Lukla, to the small airport. The world's most dangerous airport, actually. But, so they said it was going to be $1,000 US. Well, to me, that's great. That's nothing like the 30 or 60 or 100,000.
And with that horse, I'm better with spending $1,000.
It wasn't my money anyway. It was my mom's. Well, I had called my health insurance company from the U.S. to ask them if they would pay for it, and they're like, no, because it's not medical necessary. It's not an emergency. Like you can live without
it. It's gone worst.
And I'm like, how am I going to get down? So I was trying to come up with ways to make the insurance company
that's what we do.
To think that this was a life or death emergency, and I couldn't. And the evacuation place, they will cover it if it's a certain price, but it wasn't enough yet. So I thought, well, so I called my mom, and I'm like, Mom, and she was working. She was a teacher at the time. So I called her while she was at school because I figured she couldn't yell at me if she's in front of the kids. I was wrong. And I'm like, Mom, I need this helicopter to take me back to Lukla. I've injured my knee. I've tried riding the horse. I can't do it, Mom. They're gonna have to drug me to get me back on this horse. And
You actually scared her.
I'm like, I cannot get back on this horse. That is worse. And she's like, oh my God, Heather, we'll find out how much it is. I can't believe you and your trip. This is just so she goes on. So this is when I went back to talk to Amy.
Just a moment. Girls, every mother is like that. In a difficult situation, they can only scream.
Yes. Well, it's funny. My dad would let me do whatever. My mom is the practical one. Even when I would
But they are practical. But the moment they hear something, first is they have to come out with all the
Yes. It would be funny. I'll tell another story about my mom if you want to hear. I love my mom. She's great. But so I called her. Well, meanwhile, I got an email from my uncle who was staying with my family to help out with my dad at the time. And my uncle's like, Heather, can you just have them tie you to the horse? And maybe give you something to like sedate you? Because your mom is just going off over here. And I'm like, I am not, because you could, and then when I called back.
Come out with a situation where you are tied to a horse.
Yeah. And I called back to tell her it was $1,000 and that the company would pay for it and I would just have to give them cash when I got back to Kathmandu. And that it was okay, that everything would be fine. And I hear her just going up, Heather, I don't care what it takes. You have them tie you to that horse. Blindfold yourself. I'm not spending thousands of dollars for this. But when she heard it was only $1,000, she's like, oh, that's it? Okay. So she called my bank and she's like, I don't know where my daughter is. She's somewhere in the world. She needs to be medevaced out. I need you to just let her have the money if she puts in a request for $1,000. My mom didn't even know what country I was in. She just knew I'd gone to Everest. So she's telling the bank she's in Everest, wherever that is in the world. And you see a strange transaction, please just approve it. Anyway, so I took a helicopter with another Sherpa to Lukla, and we hung out there for a few days. When I got back to Kathmandu with the rest of the group, I went to the clinic, and it was really just a sprained knee. And,
that costed you $1,000.
But with the clinic visit, it was about $1,500. But that's okay, because it wasn't as much as the evacuations that they do in Alaska. And so she was all right with that. But yeah, she still lets me know, and she likes to remind me of that time quite frequently.
So after, like, when you were rescued with the helicopter, after coming down and visiting doctor, then you realized, oh, it was just a sprain. Then was your mind going through, okay, I could have just walked with the horse?
No, I mean, there was no way I was going to get back on that horse. There was no way I was going to do it. So I mean, the sprain, if I had kept walking on it, it would have gotten a lot
would
worse.
have caused much bigger
damage. There are days when I still.
But then, as you said, that you kept on, like, it's hurting, but you never told them. Would it have helped, like, if you had told them before?
Probably. If I had taken a helicopter earlier on, it probably would have been better. Because there are still days. I mean, you're talking, this was 9 years ago, I think. There are still days I feel spots on my knee from that injury. So I just tell people it's an old
So when you are on travel, of course, you have to take care of your physical fitness. If you hurt, you have to inform much ahead.
Right then and there.
And be prepared for air evacuation, and don't tell your mothers at that time. I know how they yell when they hear all this story at the moment it is happening. First they go into panic where they keep screaming at you, and then they come up with a solution. Okay, tie them to horse.
Yes, that was her solution. My mom is very, she's the money manager in our house. So even to give you another story, when I was on Kilimanjaro, the agreement was they would pay for the phone calls. I just had to call them once in a while to let them know I was okay. And it was $5 for 1 minute at the time.
Oh.
Yeah, it was really expensive. We didn't have the technology we have now. And so I would only call them like every few days. Well, there was an extremely challenging day on that mountain one day, and I was so proud of myself. I thought, I'm going to call home and tell them.
I did.
Yeah, and I had told them about it beforehand, that this was going to be my most challenging part of the mountain, I thought, physically. So I called my mom. I'm like, Mom. She's like, oh, Heather, you're okay, great. Less than a minute. She would hang up, as long as she knew I was okay. I'm like, well, shoot. So I called my dad, and my dad was leaving work, and it was a 20-minute drive home, and he talked to me the entire ride home. Because, again, my dad, I'm close to all of my family, but my dad and I had a special relationship.
Of course, both relationships are different, and
Yes.
you cannot. But the only thing is, for that 1 minute where your mom is keeping the call, she must be waiting for entire 24 hours for that one minute.
Well, the agreement was I would call every 3 or 4 days. And so, like, the fact that I had called not on a scheduled day did not work with the budget. So she's like, oh, you're good. Great. I'm glad. Love it. You know? My dad talked to me for at least 20, 25 minutes. He gets home. He gets out of the car. I can hear my mom coming out of the house, and he goes, Dexter, who are you talking to? And my dad goes, oh, it's Heather. She called me when I was leaving the office. And my mom goes, what? Hang up that phone right now. You know, because it was a $100 phone call.
Wow.
Just for that one phone call, and I think that was the largest phone bill I've ever had. I mean, they ended up paying for
a
it.
small duration.
But yeah, so I mean, that's just my mom in general. But yeah, love her, still love her. She takes me to some great places in this world.
So that's she is your inspiration for your travels, and now your stories are going to be inspiration for not only audience in India but all around the world who are watching this video. Thank you, Heather, for coming in our channel, and I really enjoyed listening to your stories. It was a great thing. Soon we'll have more such stories, and we thank Heather for being on our channel.
Well, thank you for letting me be a part of your journey.
Sure. Bye.